It was raining so hard that night that the sound of it hitting the old wooden roof drowned out the hum of the small heater inside. Jacob Reed stood by the kitchen sink, staring out into the storm through a cracked window pane. His worn gray t-shirt clung to his frame, soaked from a frantic dash outside to fix the gutter. Behind him, the faint giggle of his 6-year-old daughter, Emma, filled the small, dimly lit living room. She was playing with her rescued puppy, a scruffy ball of fur named Max. For a moment, Jacob allowed himself to smile. That sound, Emma's laughter, was the only light that kept his world from collapsing completely. He'd lost almost everything 2 years ago: his wife in a car accident, his home in foreclosure, and his job at the factory when it shut down. Since then, life had been a series of scraped-together paychecks, quiet prayers, and unshakable guilt. But he never complained. He worked double shifts at a small repair shop and spent every spare second making sure Emma felt loved. She never knew how close they were to losing the little house they rented on the edge of town. That night, as thunder rolled over the hills, a faint knock echoed through the storm. Jacob frowned. Nobody ever visited this late, not out here in the middle of nowhere. He opened the door, and froze. Standing in the downpour was a young woman, drenched to the skin, shivering violently. Her white dress clung to her like second skin, her blonde hair plastered to her face, her eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. "Please," she whispered. "My car broke down a mile back. There's no signal out here. I just need somewhere dry for the night." Jacob hesitated. A single dad, alone with his daughter, taking in a stranger in the middle of a storm. It didn't feel safe. But then he looked closer. She was trembling, her lips pale, her hands clutching a soaked purse like her life depended on it. He couldn't turn her away. Not in weather like this. "Come in," he said quietly, stepping aside. The warmth of the house seemed to shock her as she entered. Water pooled on the old wooden floor. Emma peeked from behind the couch, clutching Max in her arms, eyes full of curiosity. Jacob grabbed a towel and handed it to the woman. "You can sit by the heater," he said. "I'll grab something dry for you." She nodded, murmuring a soft thank you, her voice barely audible. "Before we go deeper into this stormy night, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe that small acts of kindness can change a person's entire life, and if you believe in second chances." As the hours passed, the tension eased. The woman, who introduced herself as Lila, sat quietly by the heater wrapped in a blanket. She seemed lost in thought, eyes distant, as if haunted by something far beyond the storm. When Jacob asked if she needed to call someone, she simply shook her head. "Not tonight," she said softly. "Please." Something about her voice, fragile but composed, made Jacob stop asking. Instead, he made her a cup of hot cocoa, the same way he always made it for Emma, with extra marshmallows. Emma warmed up to her quickly, giggling and asking questions. Lila smiled faintly, helping the little girl braid her hair as Max curled at her feet. It was strange how natural she looked there, like she belonged. Later that night, after Emma had fallen asleep, Jacob sat across from Lila at the small kitchen table. The rain had softened to a whisper. "You can sleep in the guest room," he said, gesturing toward the back. "It's not much, but it's warm." She nodded, eyes glistening with gratitude. "You didn't have to help me," she murmured. "Most people wouldn't have." Jacob shrugged. "Most people forget what it's like to need help," he said quietly. When he went to bed that night, Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her story. Something about her polished manners, the way she carried herself, it didn't match the image of a lost traveler. But he pushed the thought aside. She was a stranger who needed kindness. That was all that mattered. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the windows, painting the kitchen in soft gold. Lila was already awake, wearing one of Jacob's old shirts, cooking breakfast with Emma. The smell of pancakes and butter filled the air. Jacob stood in the doorway for a moment, watching them laugh. It was the first time he'd heard that kind of laughter in years, the kind that made the house feel like a home again. Over the next few days, the storm worsened, trapping Lila with them longer than expected. The road was washed out, and the repair shop Jacob worked at was closed until further notice. What began as an awkward situation slowly turned into something deeper. They spent evenings by the fireplace, sharing stories. Lila told Emma fairy tales, braided her hair, and helped her with her drawings. She even helped Jacob fix the old porch light, surprising him with how capable she was. But every night, when she thought no one was watching, Lila would step outside and stare at the road, her expression heavy with sadness. She carried a phone that never rang, and sometimes Jacob caught her wiping away tears before quickly smiling again. One evening, when Emma was asleep, Jacob finally asked, "Are you running from something, Lila?" She froze. Then, after a long silence, she whispered, "Not running. Just hiding." He didn't press further. He only nodded. "Well, you're safe here." Days turned into a week. Lila became part of their tiny world. Cooking, cleaning, laughing. She insisted on helping Jacob pay for groceries, though he refused. "You're my guest," he'd say. But one day, when he returned from town, he noticed the rent envelope on the counter. Paid, in full, with crisp $100 bills. He confronted her gently, but she only smiled and said, "Consider it a thank you." Jacob didn't know how to respond. He had never accepted charity. But the sincerity in her eyes made him stop arguing. That night, a black SUV appeared on the dirt road outside, its headlights piercing through the darkness. Lila froze the moment she saw it. Her face went pale, her hands trembling. Jacob instinctively stepped in front of her, protective. Two men in suits stepped out, one of them calling her name. "Miss Kingsley." Jacob turned to her, stunned. "Kingsley." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want you to know," she whispered. "My father. He's one of the wealthiest men in the state. I couldn't take his control anymore. I needed to breathe, to feel normal again. So I left." Jacob stared at her, realization hitting him like thunder. The girl he had given shelter to, the one who made pancakes with his daughter, who cried by his window, was a millionaire's daughter. Before she left, she turned to him with tears streaming down her cheeks. "You showed me what real kindness looks like, Jacob. You and Emma reminded me what a home feels like, not the kind built with money, but with love. I won't forget that." She bent down, hugged Emma tightly, whispered something in her ear, and then walked out into the rain. For weeks after she left, the house felt emptier than ever. Jacob went back to his quiet routines. Emma missed her terribly, often asking when Lila would visit again. He didn't have the heart to say he didn't know. Then, one morning, a letter arrived. It was written on fine paper with gold trimming. Inside was a note. "Greater than dear Jacob. You gave me shelter when I had nothing but fear. You showed me that compassion still exists. I wanted to return the kindness, though nothing I do will ever be enough. Go outside." Jacob stepped onto the porch, confused, and froze. Parked in front of the house was a brand new truck, with a set of keys and a folded deed on the dashboard. The papers read, "Property transfer, Jacob Reed." It was his home now. Fully paid for. Tears blurred his vision. Emma ran out, clutching his leg, asking what happened. He just smiled and whispered, "An angel kept her promise." Months later, life began to change. Jacob reopened the repair shop with new tools Lila had secretly funded. Emma started school again, her laughter filling the air. And every now and then, a letter would arrive. No return address, just the words, "I hope you're smiling today." He would write back, simple and sincere, "We are. Thanks to you." If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe, because sometimes, kindness finds its way back in the most unexpected ways. Speech balloon special request. Comment below with, "Kindness always comes back." if you believe good hearts always find each other in the end. And that's how one rainy night, a poor single dad's act of compassion changed his life forever, because love and kindness, when freely given, never truly leave. They just find their way home.